Yeah. Okay, cool. So, hey, I'm here with Kat Robinson of Robinson Ranch. Super excited to talk to you tonight. And I just thought we could have a conversation about how important it is for people to eat really clean, local, nutrient-dense foods and why, and about your business and your story and how you got started.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're passionate about eating local. I run Robinson Ranch here in Bixby, and we are a Beyond Organic farm, which is a whole long story, but basically means no junk, no chemicals. So, all the stuff I wanted for my family. And this really came about because of health for us anyway. I had one infant and one toddler at the time, and for some reasons, this was like 10 or 12 years ago, 10 years ago. I should know that. They're my kids, but. Um,
Get it?
one of us was just on a constant loop of antibiotics, like just between my husband and I and both kids, we were just sick all the time and we couldn't seem to come out of it. And I think we kind of had just had enough and looked up and we're like, we have no underlying health problems, we're young, like there's no reason this should be true. And we finally just were forced to look at our food, and that we were just driving through a drive-through, or for a long time I thought cooking at home was buying frozen dinners at the store and then coming home and microwaving them. So, I mean, it was a lot to learn there, but we kind of stumbled down a wormhole of all the documentaries that came out around that time, of like Forks Over Knives and all those ones that came out that were basically to the tune of the Western diet is trash. And if you want to have all the health problems of everybody in America, you have to eat like everybody in America. And we kind of just had to stop right there and realize that it was the food, it was what we're eating. And you aren't going to hear that from your doctor. In fact, I went in at the time, around that same time, and I had like terrible back pain. And instead of, this before I even learned what a chiropractor was, instead of saying you should stretch or you need to do anything, go to see a chiropractor, they just gave me muscle relaxers. And I remember thinking that was odd at 25 that they would just hand me that. It's 6 weeks worth of, that's a pretty addictive thing. And that's not a solution to that problem either. But I think in the end, it was, we just had to have it really handed to it in a really blunt way that what we were eating is causing all of this. And so we slowly started, we bought a juicer and we juiced some and kind of shocked our systems, and then slowly started adding things back. Like we still do 1 or 2 days a week with no meat. And I'm not anti-meat, but just teaching yourself, for us, it was teaching yourself how to cook with everything else, how that doesn't have to be the base of every meal. Like that's such a thing that we learned how to do. But we just took away everything, did like Daniel fast and worked our way back. And my husband didn't have allergies anymore. Like things that you wouldn't have even thought were connected were obviously connected, because I mean, you're either feeding disease or you're stopping it with what you're eating. And we didn't realize it was that intense. And so I started gardening because of all that. And then it, as you can tell, it kind of got out of hand after that. I guess we were surprised at how many people were learning that right alongside us, or were light years ahead, but realizing that the kind of clean vegetable that you can go outside and just pick and eat is almost hard to find at the store. You know, that's not how commercial food is grown. And so we started doing it the hard way without any chemicals. And then I started taking it to people at church, and then they started requesting things, and then it became a business. And so here we are 7 years later.
Wow, that's awesome. And so this is something that I feel like we don't have enough education, certainly not with doctors and certainly not in schools yet, is so for a family that's going to the standard box store down the road and purchasing chicken and broccoli and rice, thinking that they're eating a clean diet, but maybe not knowing, what's the problem with that as opposed to eating locally regeneratively grown food.
Well, I mean, there's almost no standards for what can be on some of these labels, is the short answer. I mean, the word natural actually means nothing. They can just slap that on anything. The one I always giggle at the store, because we have chickens. I didn't know this before we had chickens, but the ones that say vegetarian fed, they're not vegetarians, right? Like, but you don't know that unless you have chickens. It's just slapping labels on things, and there's nobody to stop anybody. I mean, the ones like certified organic comes with a pretty hefty fine if you lie about that one, but there's a whole lot you can just lie about and no one's going to catch you. So we like to use the hashtag know your farmer. It definitely does not have to be me, but you kind of need to know someone, because there's not much accountability to what happens at the store. In fact, I looked and there are 9 qualifications of eggs at this point. That's exhausting. why would you need to know all of those when you know most of them are fake anyway, right?
They are.
It's too much. You could spend a lifetime reading labels and be exhausted. I get why that turns people off. Yeah, but if you buy local, if you go walk up to someone at the farmer's market and look that person in the eye and shake their hand, they're gonna probably tell you way too much about what you're eating, right? They're probably gonna tell you the Latin name and, you know, the name of the pig or the chicken. Like there's an intimacy that comes with growing it or raising it yourself, and those people care. They care way too much. And that's who you really ultimately want growing or raising your food, is someone who cares like that instead of just out for a profit.
Absolutely. What would be some tips for people who are just getting started and would like to eat cleaner on a budget?
Well, probably the cheapest thing is to grow some of it yourself. But if that's not something that you can do where you are or have any, desire to, I would say try to start small. When any of us do a crash diet or you try to overhaul, it's too overwhelming and you can't stick to it. That's just so hard to just keep adding something new and green and healthy to your diet each week. And maybe the reverse as well. Cut a drive-through and just say, we're just done. We're just done with this particular one or this particular vice. Or, I know somebody who used to eat Sour Patch Kids every night laying in bed. If you kill that one habit, you would be a lot better off. Like you just have to kind of start small and chipping away at some of those things.
Awesome. Okay, let's think. There's so much information here, and I'm just really trying to think of people who are brand new to shifting their lifestyle. So we know that food is medicine. We know that we want to reduce the chemicals in our diet. You mentioned Beyond Organic, how your farm is Beyond Organic. To somebody who's never heard that term before, how would you describe that?
Well, I think it's still better than conventionally grown vegetables, which, a lot of what I believe is the reason that all the gluten intolerance is really not that much to do with the wheat. It is to do with the chemicals we put on these plants. And so if you figure how heavy that part of it is, how it's being grown and not just what you're eating matters. So I wish people could see it. I wish it was visible, that you could go buy a zucchini at Walmart and then buy one from the farmer's market. But the nutrient density of those two things are wildly different and we can't see it. And that's the hard part. But I think, to be certified organic, we were for quite a while, is a hefty amount of paperwork, and they test your soil, but the list of things that you're still allowed to spray, it was pretty long. So it is still better than conventional. Their terminology was known poisons versus unknown poisons, which I think is an insane sentence, but that's how they categorize some things. And so we are now regeneratively grown, which the only standards for that have a lot more to do with if you are improving the soil. They test the nutrient density of your soil, and they pretty much know all they need to know right there. But it was a lot of, do you till the ground? Do you use animals? Do you rotate crops? It was a lot more soil health based, which is really what it should be, because that's ultimately, if you have dead soil, it doesn't matter how many chemicals you add to it, the plant will also have zero nutrients. And so if our soil is rich, your food is rich, our bodies are rich. And so that one is the certification that actually matters to me. Now, most people don't know what that means, so I usually try to say more than organic, so that makes sense. But the point was for me to send my kids outside into the backyard and pick stuff off the plant and eat it, and we don't need to wash it. So that was our standard. I don't know that that's
should be a term. It's never been on a truck. It's never been picked.
Never been anywhere else. Yeah.
Early and then trucked across the country and losing the nutrition it may have.
Right. The time matters too. Yeah. Some of those bagged lettuces are 2 weeks old. So yeah, it can't have much left that long. That's right. Because that's how it is. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard.
So you have a program. Tell us a little bit about, before we go, tell us a little bit about your foundation and your program to help educate kids in schools, why that's important to you. And then I'd love to know what you offer at your farm as far as what you grow and what's in your farm shop and your programs there.
Okay. So I went in 2019 and took in stuff to do a plant class in my kids' school. My kids go to Bixby schools right down the road from us. And we were going to do cucumber plants. So I took the full grown plant and I took, the dirt and the cups and the seed, and we were talking about it. And I held up a cucumber, and 3 of 26 kids knew what a cucumber was. And these were 3rd graders. And so I kind of stumbled back right there, that it's worse than we think it is, because that's not a weird vegetable. Like if I wanted to stump them, I probably could have brought in something weird.
Right.
That's one I should recognize, right? And so it was kind of like, oh, and then half that room, I cut it up because part of this, I think, for kids this age is the sensory parts. They need to touch and feel and taste it. And so we cut it up. Half of them claimed they'd never had one. Now, whether that's true, I know the moms are probably cringing. They're like, no, I have definitely done. They might not know it was a cucumber they ate. So I don't want to, make mom feel bad. But they didn't realize, they didn't put that together. I really just was shocked that they don't realize where their food comes from to that extreme. But if I'd held up hot Cheetos, there'd have been 0 kids who knew, who didn't know who that was. So it's just how many times they've seen it, how much it's been put in front of them. And so we kind of started doing field trips and stuff out here at the farm, because again, I think you just remember that better if you can see it and smell it and touch it, right? And you remember things in a totally different way than if I come into the school. Now we do go into the schools and do a plant class. My kids always come home from school with things like growing grass in a cup. And I'm like, let me give you some cool seeds that will actually do more than grass. But I like to teach kids that part, because I think, too, if we can change what they understand about real food, they don't have to get to the point that some of us are as adults. Like if McDonald's was never your comfort food, you won't have to break that habit when you're 40 or 50 and it's starting to hurt you, So some of those things, if you catch it younger, we don't have to let it get to this point. They can understand the difference in real food. Like we say to my kids, what's truth or trash? So real food and trash food. And you can have some trash food, but it needs to be a tiny percent of your diet, and the rest is growing food. And so teaching that seems to be where our passion is. My kids are 8, 10, and 12, so we're kind of surrounded in that area anyway. My oldest is now homeschooled, and his entire science is just my job, right? So it's kind of handy. But we said, if nothing else, I want my kids to understand where food comes from, how to feed your body well so that it can heal itself the way it was designed to. And I think that's probably where we're the furthest at in America, is we don't understand that your body's supposed to be able to heal yourself if you're feeding it the right things. But so we started a foundation with that. Yeah.
The comfort food thing you mentioned is so true. And really what it would look like to have a generation of adults who don't have to reclaim their health, who were built, grow up with a foundation of sunshine and soil and quality food that can go off and follow their passions and help, build a beautiful world ahead of us, rather than having to figure out what's wrong with them and then figure out that maybe the doctors weren't giving them the right information.
They don't know better. Yeah.
They have the right information themselves. They don't get nutrition hours.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah. In medical school, they're not taught nutrition.
No.
So
yeah.
I want to know how the machine works so that I can live quality years at the end of my life, not just live longer quality years. So
yeah.
Okay, so at Robinson Ranch, you have how many? You're about 10 acres on there. It's like
we're only on 5 acres, but we're pretty maxed out at this point. I know.
It's a big operation, because you've got the 2 greenhouses. Is that you've got 2 now? Yeah.
We're hoping to get a grant to put up a 3rd one this year. It's about a ½ acre of outside garden as well.
Cool. And then the cows and the chickens.
Handful of cows. Yeah, 150 chickens. We're out of room. In a good way.
Yeah, that's great. So what can you offer the community as far as, I know that you have volunteer work days, where that's how I met you, coming out there and actually, bringing the boys and just shoveling some mushroom compost. And that was really energizing. I was surprised how motivated I was after I do a work day with you. I want to come home and work on my garden. I thought I would want to come home and just sit on the couch. And I was like jazzed to put what I learned to work here. But you've got the farm shop and you've got tours. Tell me what you have going on there.
Well, we learned pretty early on, like we do chicken eggs and occasionally beef and our vegetables, but it was hard for people to round out a grocery order. And so we've kind of just collected everybody at the farmer's market. So where we are in Bixby, we're a ½ hour from a farmer's market every direction. And so people can come to our farm store on Wednesdays and Saturdays, 9 to noon, and shop 45 different vendors. And collecting all the time, because I think it's important to buy local for 1,000 reasons, but health and economy and really accountability at this point. I feel like there's just too many ways you're getting lied to in life. Don't let food be one of them.
It used to be a t-shirt.
But yeah, so we have the farm store, and then we also deliver all over Tulsa on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you can just get on RobinsonRanchVeggies.com and
perfect.
pick what you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. And we're going to share this with our community and hopefully help people be able to make healthier choices without having to figure it out, without it having to be so hard. So
It is hard, but it's worth it, right?
totally worth it. Totally worth it. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.